What's up, everybody? Welcome in to another edition of SSPN Live. Ethan, it's been a little bit since we've done just like a straight up SSPN Live. Obviously, we've done a lot of post games,
Mm-hmm.
which have been very enjoyable this season. But, but especially amidst the 12 game losing streak. No, I think, you know what, starting it like that is a good way to start it, Ethan, because getting a little bit off track, getting a little bit maybe off of rhythm, even though it really wasn't that bad. I'm just trying to make an analogy to, sometimes when the Spurs think the game is going to start a certain way, it doesn't start that way. And sometimes that's how our podcasts go. And that has really been the case for the Spurs this season, Ethan.
Yeah, dude. Again, I feel like a broken record saying that. I feel like a broken record because the Spurs just continue to struggle. And I guess the only silver lining, Jude, is at the very least they're not blowouts necessarily. Like, they're not clean and they're not fun to watch, but at least we're not losing by 30 like we were earlier in the year. We're only losing by like 15, which is still not fun. But I guess it's a slight improvement.
Yeah, I would say that these last three games, especially after how the Clippers game went and then just the
Mm,
collapse against the Grizzlies, the fact that we've been in the game, to some extent, not really not in the Nuggets game whatsoever.
no.
But in the Clippers game and then that last Warriors game, even though the Warriors game was really kind of, we were really only in the game, on the scoreboard. You know what I'm saying, at the end of it, even though it got close and technically there was a chance that the Spurs maybe could have made some shots or done some things. But as we've seen on this 12 game losing streak, they're not there yet, Ethan. They are young bucks still learning. But I want to give a shout out to our man Courtney Runnels here in the comments. He says today is his 28th birthday. So shout out to you, Courtney. Shout out to Nick in here as well, says happy birthday. And here's what he also says. He says, I was thinking about Jude when I read an article about Dom Barlow. He says more time for Barlow, please. I'm not against it. I was very disappointed, Ethan, because we can talk about the injury report if we want to talk about some Spurs news. There is unfortunately a chance Victor Wembanyama doesn't play tomorrow. He is questionable due to hip soreness. So that's just wonderful for our post game. But we'll be there regardless. Hopefully by some miracle he plays tomorrow. In good news, Jeremy Sohan is probable after being out, getting a little bit of an injury there. I believe it was on his knee. Just got a little bit banged up. So he's back. Good to know that wasn't anything major. But Dom Barlow, they said he was available. I was like, okay, well, if Wemby's questionable, this is a no-brainer. And then they announced he's going to be in Austin.
Oh.
So, I mean, like, I'm like, if Wemby doesn't play, can you at least give me Barlow, man?
Hey, man, that your boy is going to be the MVP of the G League. Let's just get that out of the way. Isn't he averaging like 30.3 right now with like 12 boards? I'm pretty sure he's going crazy.
I like how we're 3 minutes into this podcast and we talked about the Spurs for a little bit and we're already like, okay, let's talk about the Austin Spurs, because that's just once again another example of how the season has gone. But it also is kind of pertinent because they did have a game yesterday against the Memphis Hustle that they won in blowout fashion, and Blake Wesley had probably one of his better G League games. But still, man, like, even though it was one of his better games, and once I pull up the numbers here in a second, there were good things, obviously. He had 14, 9 rebounds, 8 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks on efficient shooting, 4 for 6 from 3, 5 for 8 overall, and plus 30 in the box score, the highest on the team. But still, man, like, if you remember our guy Javonte McCoy from Summer League, okay, he had 22, 10, and 10.
Oh boy.
So it's like, and Barlow had 28 and 5. That's originally how this kind of connected with, just how he's been scoring in the G League. It's almost basically every game for the Austin Spurs. He's put up, I think the lowest total he's put up this season is about 24. I'd have to go check the averages on the G League website because they don't have that on ESPN, where I just pulled up the box score. But going back to Blake Wesley, it's like, even when he has one of his better games he's probably had on the Austin Spurs, he's still getting outplayed technically by Javonte McCoy. You know what I'm saying? And it's
Mhm.
just like, yeah, Eric Stevenson had 20 and 6 too. Like that's more than I would still say Blake had more of an impact on the game, but that's just an example of how, we talk so much about the point guard position this year, Ethan. Wouldn't it be nice if Blake would have made a jump over the summer, being a
Mm.
former first round draft pick?
Yeah, it does hurt. He could address a lot of the issues for us right now. Being that 6'4" point guard that can defend as well as be a spark plug and a scorer. But this is going to be kind of a hot take, I guess. I think because we're losing so badly, we would hope that he would have made a jump quicker. However, where we drafted him, who he was when we did draft him as kind of a very raw point
Yeah.
guard prospect, he's probably right about where he should be developmentally wise. Like, had a team drafted him that what was he, 25?
Yep.
Had that team at 25 drafted him, that's likely like a playoff contender, maybe a championship contender on any other given year. He is in the G League. He's getting these reps, and nobody's questioning anything. But because we're so bad, and because he addresses a need,
Yeah.
like it's kind of spotlit. The fact that he's not necessarily where Malachi or Jeremy are currently.
Yeah, yeah, that is a good point because he definitely like as I've mentioned, I feel like at nauseum on this channel, Malachi was more of a lottery pick.
That
Was
slipped.
right, so kind of in that same range as Jeremy. Whenever it comes to just the caliber of player, but I think the flip side of it for me is the
Hmm.
things that I've seen with 3 picks that we had at 29 over the last couple years with
True.
Keldon Johnson, and specifically 2 point guards that are around his size and obviously different play style, but still some similarities to both of those guys in Derek White and DeJounte Murray. Um,
Hmm.
so that's why I think for me it's a little bit disappointing. But it is good to see him make some strides. Hopefully he can continue to do that in the G League. Um, and maybe as I've mentioned kind of on this channel a couple times over the past couple weeks that I'm really interested to see just throughout this losing streak what this team looks like maybe after the All-Star break. With just a good 60 games or so playing together,
Hmm.
with Wembenyama, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe that's a time that we would get to see him and maybe get to see if he can, take some strides forward. But um, even so far from what I've seen from him this year, it and it's a long way away, but still, I question if he's going to be a rotation guy next season. Which is kind of a little bit in year 3, a little bit surprising for a first round pick with the other
Hmm.
what we've done with the other guys drafted 4 picks after him. That I just referenced.
I don't think it's a hot take necessarily. I think that's probably true. Um, However, he probably will be a rotational player post All Star break. Simply, I saw a headline that the Spurs will be making. Again, don't know how reliable this was. The guy's title was like NBA Insider, so who knows how reliable he is. But Doug McDermott, Chetty Osman, and Devonte Graham may all be available at the deadline for the Spurs. I think Devonte is probably more likely than Chetty or Doug, which may open up some minutes for him. But like Nick just said in the comments there, Devontae's really not getting that much playtime as it is anyway. So if Blake decided to absorb those minutes and be like, what, 5 or 6
Right.
here and there, nothing really worthwhile.
Yeah. And I don't think that, as we've mentioned before, I don't think he's going to overtake
No.
Trey Jones or Jeremy Sohan this season. So, um, there was another interesting article that I saw today, Ethan, that I am going to look up at the moment. I know we've got some comments in here as well. You can go ahead and start with this one. Our man Callow55 says at SSPN, a San Antonio Spurs podcast,
Mm.
after seeing 17 games, what is both of your new updated win predictions for the season? So I've talked about this in a lot of my solo lives, Ethan. I'm sure you've heard a little bit about it,
Mm-hmm.
just in how I'm definitely, I don't think we're going to be anywhere near where I had predicted us to be before the season. And a little bit of that was kind of to put that change in prediction into like, if there's one thing that I really missed and didn't think about before the season, we were just texting about this week. It's that obviously there's so much positives and there's so many good things that drafting Victor Wembanyama brings to your team and your franchise. But at the same time, in his rookie year at 19 years old, there's with zero NBA experience, despite all of the pro and international experience. It's just a different style of play, different calling of fouls, et cetera, et cetera. That we're not going to be anywhere close to that prediction.
Mhm.
And that it opens up a whole nother list of problems, kind of with these guys bringing him in. While it does, obviously, like I just said, I could go on and on forever about the good things that he brings, but there was going to be an adjustment period, an adjustment for him in the NBA, an adjustment to his players playing together, an adjustment also for those players playing together for the first time. There were just a lot of things that I underestimated and felt like he would cover up because of his crazy potential, essentially. So I
Mhm.
bought the hype train. I chewed on it a little bit too much, and predicted competing for the play in the 9 to 11 seed in this stacked Western Conference. So as of right now, I think we're probably, I would still say, and we'll see how this goes. I still think we're going to get more than 22 wins. Like, I think we'll win more games than we did last season. But I would say, like, anyway, just as of right now, I would go with like 28-33, and really it could be less than that. Um, but I'm just kind of betting on like some breaks for us to start to fall their way later in the season, for the Spurs. I think winning 5 more games, as a floor isn't too unreasonable.
No, I think a late season resurgence and run is very likely because teams will start to rest players, and the Spurs will begin to kind of address those difficulties chemistry wise. People would look at used to playing in their roles with each other. Um, However, I think I went back and I watched our preseason predictions,
Yeah,
um, and I said optimistically 11 the seed, but realistically 13. I think realistically 13 is still within the realm of possibility. I know right now we're 15 in the West, so it's really been a rough patch here to start the season. But I'm going to stick with my initial realistic prediction, which was 13th seed, roughly 30 wins. I think is fair. Um, it could be less depending on how we decide to play Wemby late in the year. Maybe we'll decide to rest him like other teams rest their stars. Who knows? I've been frankly very surprised that he's played every game until now. If this, what is this, game 17, game 16?
yeah,
For this to be his first rest game is actually very impressive for me, um, in terms of Wembanyama because of his slender build and whatnot. Um, but yeah, I think this is just the reality of the situation, and we all fell into the same hype train, that is Wembanyama, and we kind of, I don't know, in our minds, the team, it was literally like 2K where you could just insert a great player and immediately they know how to play with one another.
right.
Just not the case, and that's never been the case. The only teams that
Yeah,
that has been the case is like Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, but those guys are like 23 as rookies playing on teams with other all-stars immediately.
yeah,
That's not the same situation with the San Antonio Spurs. Even Tim Duncan joined David Robinson, Sean Elliott, perennial all-stars. That is not the case for Victor Wembanyama. And some guys have taken a step back. I saw a couple names in the comments. Malachi Branham, to me, has not been as explosive as I thought he would be coming off the bench. Maybe in a bit of a sophomore slump. Hopefully, he can address that. And Zach Collins, yeah, he's been very hot and cold. I mean, he is not without his faults. We're both fans of his. I still think he's better. He's more often better than he is bad. But when he's missing that many threes and he is not being a physical presence down low, it can be very difficult to watch him play, because of his undersized nature. And then he's not going to bang down low when we have Victor Wembanyama in the game at the same time. So that's a very long-winded way of saying the 13th seed around 30 wins.
gotcha. Yeah. Ethan definitely was the more conservative of the predictions in that video. If y'all go look back and
You did get me though, because you went second and you were typing it up, and I was like, you know what, it's
I
possible, it's
I bought
possible.
so into the media day stuff. But here's the other thing, just to kind of finish this conversation, at least on my end, is I guess not only just the Wembenyama hype, but the optimism that I had was the flip side of them not playing together that much. And obviously I completely ignored like young players not playing together in the NBA. Like there's going to be a lot of different learning lessons and things that
Mhm.
they don't understand that are just going to take reps and years, to really develop and know where to go to become, instinctual on some things. Cause there's so many other teams where I noticed that on defense, where we just get caught up, because they just know how to do certain things and we think we're driving past somebody and it's a pickpocket, and the same can be said, on the other side, whenever we're going up against stars. If we make a mistake versus a star so far this season, I mean, they're gonna make us pay
Yeah.
99.9% of the time. But I was kind of thinking of the flip side of that, which was the much less likely side. And obviously I've been reminded of that so far. But because they hadn't played together, it was like, okay, well, when they do,
Yeah,
it could
it'll
be
click.
it could be a lot better than last year, right? And the other thing is when, and I think, oh well, you add Wembenyama into that, then it's just so much more talent than we had last year. But like I said, all of these other things that we've been talking about are also a factor there. But when you have like the lottery picks and the potential, like we just talked about, it feels like Malachi's taken a step back. Probably in a different scenario, like if he's on a championship team, it may not feel that way. Maybe it would, but I'm just saying he probably wouldn't have had the same opportunities that he did last season, where he got to show, so much of his bag that he has. That now when he's in this role and struggling more, it feels like a dip. I'm not saying it's not a dip because he has taken a step back. There's still times where I see him getting to his spots and not converting as much. This year we need him you'd expect him coming into this season. Like the one thing we wanted to see him improve on was his spot up shooting. Everything else we really liked, or excuse me, his catch and shoot shooting from three, because we know that he can get to his spots and, pull up from mid range and drive to the basket, et cetera, et cetera. And we haven't seen that as much this year. But that's also because now with Wembenyama, his role has been more of being a catch and shoot guy than it was last year. You know
Mhm.
what I'm saying?
For sure.
So that doesn't mean that he's still, we still don't want him to take those strides and be good in those roles, because, there's still some memories in my mind when we're talking about this of him missing wide open threes that would be, crucial for us in that situation. And still, when you get a wide open three and it's a two guard, you want to convert, you know. Um, but with all that being said, with the potential of him and the potential of Jeremy Sohan, and of course Devin Vassell only playing 38 games last year as well, I just really felt like, with our development staff and those guys around Wembenyama, that it was just, I was like, it's going to be like it's 2026 already, or 2025, you know what I mean? And
Mhm.
we're going to have to go through it. We've talked about, I think in the debrief episode that we did when the losing streak was 9 games, we talked about how the Thunder, in their last 2 seasons, before the year prior where they just made the play-in, and obviously we know what we're doing this year, they were 50 loss teams,
Mhm.
on sub 26 win teams 2 years in a row. And obviously, they made some trades along the way. But at the same time, that was really, I mean, I believe Shea Gilgeous was on both of those teams.
He was. I think he might
So
have been hurt the first year or
yeah, he was
one or the
hurt.
other.
He was hurt one of the years for sure. Um, but you got to build,
Mhm.
you got to build. And that's the other thing that, and we'll see, because we're sitting here in November of Victor's first season. But I will admit, thinking more future sighted with him, there, the roster, I think there's a lot of guys we're going to keep, but there will be guys who end up leaving for
Mhm.
probably some of the guys that we draft in the next couple years, especially if the season keeps going this way and we end up getting another like top 5 range pick, which obviously that would be great for the team. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. But at the same time, there might be some guys that there might be some Derricks and DeJountes. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, it's no longer safe. It's no longer like for sure that we're keeping everybody.
Yeah.
As soon as the franchise player enters the room, everything changes.
Yep. Yep. But here's the article that I was referencing a little bit earlier, Ethan, before we kind of got into that question there from Callow 5. So we appreciate you. Is this article here today from Sports Illustrated, I think it's Inside the Spurs Fan Nation, but regardless, this was some substantive, I still didn't say it right, but y'all know the word I'm talking about, stuff here that is a headline grabber. And usually when you see these headline grabbers, if you just go read them, there's not really much substance, kind of like I was just referencing earlier. But I did think there was here because there's a quote from Pop. I did not watch I haven't watched his recent press conferences. I've been noticing they're all like a minute 30, and from what I've been getting on Twitter, it seems like he's just been kind of like not really saying much. So when I saw this and I saw that he made this recent comment, um, this was interesting. I want Wembenyama to play both center and forward. I don't want him to just be a perimeter player, just a post player. He can affect the game in both areas. He's got to get minutes in both. And we've been seeing that. And I'm not saying that this is an indication of a lineup change, but this is something that Pop is talking about in the sense that, it could be a little bit different and maybe something that he's noticed in these first 17 games moving forward that he does want to do with Wemby moving forward. And, we've talked about how, ad nauseum, again, there's so many things it feels like we've already talked about ad nauseum 17 games into the year. But one of them is that they're not really, going hard on scheme right now whatsoever. They don't even really have, a base game plan. They're just kind of letting him play. So this seems like the first thing that I've seen from him where he's made kind of a definitive statement about something that he wants him to do since the season has started.
Wow. Yeah, you're probably right. You're probably right. And it's weird that we kind of assumed this already, but it's nice to actually hear it from the horse's mouth.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm interested to see, we've seen the Trey, Devin, basically take Zach out, put Trey in, move Jeremy back to power forward, and move
Mhm.
Wemby to center. Line up a couple times. I don't think that that's going to be the starting lineup. I was listening to our boy Rob Trejo from Spurs Film Room back in the day. Y'all go check that out on his YouTube channel. It's just his name, Rob Trejo Jr. He did a little 24-minute podcast just kind of about the losing streak and, Wembenyama and his development and where we want to play him moving forward. And one of the things that he mentioned in there was like the Spurs really like to stick with what they decide to do preseason. So, and he listed a couple of examples from previous years, and it was more in the big three. And a lot of times in those years, you'd maybe see some slow starts and then the Spurs would really turn it up and go on a big winning streak, and that was kind of the point he was making there was it took a little bit for their points of emphasis or the adjustment for that season with that specific team
Hmm.
to get going. But they stuck with it the whole time. And that's what I think is going to happen with the Jeremy Sohan situation, regardless of what the Spurs masses feel.
Mhm.
But what this also indicates is we will be seeing, I think, a little bit less of that, not as in taking him out of the starting lineup, but we will see more lineups with Wembenyama at center, which I think allows for Jeremy Sohan to end up playing power forward more.
Yes, and I think that's actually been just I watch. I don't know the stats here. That's probably been our best lineup visually with
I
him at
agree.
center, Jeremy at forward, Trey starting at the point guard. I understand where everyone's coming from that doesn't like Jeremy Sohan at point guard. I know all the advanced stats point at him being not the correct decision there, and I understand the whole angle of this is Wemby's first season. He should really have a natural point guard to make things easier on him. Um, all that being said, for those of you feeling this way, how I've dealt with it is something that I continue to tell myself from game to game. We're literally going to lose no matter what, first of all. Second of all, it will force by fire Jeremy to learn how to be a better ball handler. It will also force by fire Victor Wembanyama to be assertive, demand the ball, and get used to having to demand the ball from guys that aren't natural point guards. And another way to look at it is they're literally for his entire rookie season, Jude. They're going to make him swing with a weight on the bat. Think about what happens when we eventually take that weight off the bat.
No, exactly.
It should be like chariots of fire. Just all of a sudden, boom, we're taking off. So think about that in the long term, in the future. I understand your pain, but I think it might be a necessary evil. And like you said, I don't think it's going to change no matter what we say.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And one of the other things that Rob was kind of talking about there, it just kind of his perspective on what this season is and kind of how the Spurs are going to use it. And really he's been doing this longer than we have. And what he was saying is that his idea and his kind of take and read on this season is that basically we're going to use it as just like it's just going to be a film study for us in the off season to figure out what we're going to do with Wembenyama. Like we're just going to get as much sample size as we can, and
Hmm.
then we can figure out how we want to build around him, how exactly we want to make this scheme that may be a scheme that's super unique and never seen before because there hasn't been a player like him. I think you kind of get what I'm saying there.
Hmm. Yeah,
But one of the other things I thought that this article did a good job of pointing out, I'll just kind of read some of this here at the end. It's not too much longer. One of the biggest reasons, and here, let me give this guy credit. Shout out to Matt Guzman, who wrote this yesterday afternoon. One of the biggest reasons for the Jeremy Sohan experiment was to allow Wembenyama to play at Sohan's position without displacing the second year sophomore out of the starting lineup. That's been iffy at best so far, which is why Popovich might be eager to try something new. Moving Wembenyama to the 5 would open things up at the point guard position. Trey Jones, who's come off the bench all season, would get his shot to be the Spurs starting point guard, while Sohan could comfortably revert to his power forward tendencies. I don't necessarily think that's going to happen, but what I was trying to say, I liked this beginning here. One of the biggest reasons for the Jeremy Sohan experiment was to allow Wembenyama to play at his position, but not start Jeremy. And I think that's more of a testament to what we think about Jeremy moving forward than it is, about him becoming an elite point guard. Does that make sense?
for sure. I really don't think that was ever the case. I don't think
Yeah.
anyone ever said this was his long-term position.
Yeah, for sure. And this is the other thing that I read. While he mentions that could be the lineup that they could switch, maybe he also mentions Wembenyama has the height to make him an easy option at center. But
Hmm.
between he and Sohan, there'd have to be more communication to effectively fill the role of a typical center that neither of them do, which I appreciated. I was like, okay, like he's acknowledging that. While yes, if you move to that lineup, there's going to be some things that could be better offensively, there is still going to be this deficiency here. And think about it, as much as in 3 years Victor will be able to hold his own in the post, probably to a level that we haven't seen. And I don't want to, I feel like I should knock on wood just talking about how good he's going to be in the future, but you can see it even in the last game. We haven't talked about that. The 6 steals, dude, like
Hmm.
when he starts to catch on, he's going to start doing crazy stuff. And I know that the Nuggets, had some injuries in that game, but still doing that on Jokic is impressive to
Yeah.
say the least in your 17th game in the league. And as he continues, Wembenyama would need to get more rebounds, play down low, and facilitate passes from the 3-point line in the post. And the reason I bring that up is because the point I was getting to before that little off tangent thing there was, like, think about the struggles like Zach is having right now. Like, think about what that would look like with Wembenyama at center. Like, as much as there'd be some times where he'd be able to grab some rebounds, et cetera, like going back to this, with him and Sohan in the front court, like I said, in 2025, that's like pristine. I love it. But this season, there would definitely be some 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 issues, growing pains, whatever you would want to call them, with if those two were immediately in the front court and we play the Timberwolves, for example.
Oh God, I can't even imagine.
And think about what they already did to us with Zach and Victor in there earlier.
Yeah. Oh, poor Zach. I feel so bad for Zach.
Yeah, and with his contract, it'll be interesting to see if maybe they do view him as a, in the next 2 years with his extension. I know that Pop said he's the 5 of the future, but after this year and with Victor Wembanyama now on your roster, he did say that before they drafted Victor. That's the other thing. Um, I wonder if they view him as a backup 5, moving forward.
I think they have to.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, I think his flaws are
I
too
agree.
too big, and I don't think he can address them unfortunately. Like what he is pretty much what he's going to be, and he's still very solid. Like what we
Yeah,
saw against the Kings was Zach Collins at his absolute best.
right.
It's just consistency.
Yeah. And, as much as there have been a lot of struggles from Zach and it's been, it's been tough to watch, like you said, at times with him out there. Um, I went back and I watched almost like every assist from this season from that website that I was telling you about. And he, it was kind of funny. Let me pull up my notes. I haven't even gone to these yet. One of the things I wrote down is we still do run a good bit with Zach out of the post, like
Hmm.
probably like 30 to 25% of our assists this season have still been from Zach, usually in the post, sometimes in other places. So, there are some good things that we've seen from him, but it doesn't cover up or make up for the deficiencies that we've seen from him this year. But another thing that I kind of wanted to get into just on the offense when I was talking about that, man, it seems like it's got to be a pick and roll, a catch and shoot three.
Hmm.
And then, we really don't even cut to the basket that much when I look at that. But some of them, like when I talk about the Zach assists, there are some cuts to the basket there. But when
Hmm.
I was looking at our offense, man, like it's like we're either like it's Devin trailing, on a little bit of an offensive set that we run. It's a pick and roll or it's a catch and shoot three. And that's not, as we know, we haven't been efficient this season, but it's been very like it's like we score those three ways or we don't score at all. Like those
Yeah.
are it was just alarming to me when I went and looked at like the last like 3 or 4 games. I just watched every shot we've taken. And that's something that's also been a theme even earlier in the year, but it really stands out. I mean, when you think about it, those are very basic kind of, if you're freestyling,
Hmm.
that would probably be the shots that you would get. And then when you're going up against an actual NBA defensive scheme, we've kind of seen how that's gone over the course of 48 minutes. Obviously, the Spurs have their bright spots in a lot of these games, but when the adjustments come in, it just gets stalled. And then we get lucky to get one of those plays that I just mentioned every once in a while. And the other thing is we don't. Another strength of ours is our transition, and
Hmm.
we don't get stops often enough for that to be a strength.
I was literally about to say the only reason young teams are explosive is because they have high energy, they get stops, they get steals, and they run out in transition, and they just have more energy than old teams. So they're able to score a lot. We're not stopping anybody right now. And then offensively, there's just no, like you said it earlier, instinctually, we have no instincts.
Yeah.
Um, there's no cohesion. We're not on one piece of string. I don't know if the better
Yes, we're
analogy,
not
but
connected.
we're not connected at all. It's complete disconnect. It's sluggish, but it's also regimented, so teams are easily dissecting it. They're just like, I know you're about to cut back door, Doug McDermott, because you cut back door
And you don't run
95%
anything.
of the time.
And you don't run anything. That's the other
Literally.
thing. This ties into like it's as much as it's frustrating, it is kind of like those three plays being the main ones just
Hmm.
emphasize to me again like how much like we're not running anything super complex. There are like some semblances of some motion sets that we run at the beginning of games, but it's like once they start to make those adjustments, like the first time out,
Hmm.
maybe we'll get through a whole quarter with the lead like we did against the Warriors, but when they make those adjustments, all of those just go to complete like trash can. God bless them, but it's just like they get stopped. They make
Hmm.
the adjustments and they derail. The little glimmers of some sort of offensive cohesion that we maybe saw for 6 minutes.
Yeah, it's getting tough to watch, Jude. It's getting really difficult to
Same
watch.
here. These last couple games have been really tough for me, and that's why I'm referencing bucketlist.fan so much, the watching every single field goal and stuff,
Hmm.
because it's been hard for me just being diehard fans that we are, watching it and knowing the result before you knowing the movie before you've even seen it. Like
Yeah.
that's how I would describe it.
Yeah, the script has been leaked.
Yeah.
It's literally like an old 70s like cop show where it's always the same thing.
Uh-huh.
It's literally how it feels. First quarter, we're gonna get off to a good start, Jude. Timeout, we're going to come out sluggish. They're going to make adjustments, like you said, and it's going to be a dogfight for maybe a quarter and a half, and then they're going to run away with it. And at the end, in garbage time, we might make it a little bit closer, but
We'll give you a little bit
ultimately
of hope.
we lose by 10-20.
You got it, Ethan. You got it. On one of the solo post games I did, I don't remember which game it was, but you said we're going to get this to single digits and lose, and that's exactly what happened.
Oh, and
I'm
then
gonna.
and then Twitter's gonna say Trey Jones needs to start, Jeremy's trash, and Victor will have at least 2 or 3 like crazy highlights that the NBA Twitter will post over and
They'll
over and
just
over
pump.
again. And
Yeah.
then the rest of the NBA fan base is like, screw this guy, Chet's better, Spurs suck, fire pop. It's always the same thing.
Exactly. That was such a good representation of NBA Twitter there, Ethan. But
Thank you.
I saw this comment from Courtney a while ago. I know I'm late here, but we're going to come back and look at some of these as we wrap up. He says, looks like we'll be playing DeJounte Murray tomorrow. I really want Wemby to embarrass Murray since he spoke poorly about the Spurs. Sounds like Wemby is questionable for tomorrow because of an injury. Yes, that is what we referenced earlier. Nothing serious, but and like you said, really, it's a good thing. When I thought about this season, I thought we would already be managing rest games, but I think he's really trying to play as many games as he can.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that he's questionable and Jeremy's listed at probable kind of makes me feel like they're going to sit him, which is tough because it would just be a fun game to have Wemby versus DeJounte, just, with the history. And I'm not even necessarily referencing like we need to beat the crap out of DeJounte because of what he said. And I totally get what you're saying, Courtney Runnels, but also at the same time, it's just like that would have been a fun matchup, just like I said, because he's a former Spur.
Yeah. I think, honestly, because he might not play, if he doesn't play, the game might be closer. As weird as that sounds, because suddenly we have our starting lineup from last
That
year.
would be interesting. Yeah.
So, as not exciting as it will be because Wemby's not playing, the cohesion on paper should be better.
Yeah. We've seen that in spurts a little bit this season. We have to see it over 48 minutes.
That still has not happened.
But right. But I understand where you're coming from. I think there could be a chance where, everybody just kind of knows their spots a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that they'll come out strong like they normally do, as we just referenced, and maybe they'd be able to, jump on them a little bit. But also, are the Hawks having a pretty good year? I think they are.
I think they're playing pretty okay.
Let me go look at their record.
I will ask you this question, Jude.
Go ahead.
Who gets 20 rebounds first, Onyeka Okongwu or Clint Capella?
Clint Capella. They're 8-9. They're 8-9.
Right
so
in the
not
middle.
Yeah, not in comparison to us. They're having a fantastic season. Yeah. I'm trying to see where they're. I can't get the standings up. I've only got them. Unfortunately, I was trying to see where they're where they're at in the East. I know DeJounte's had some good games this year. I believe he might have had a 40-point game.
They're
something
10.
like that. They're 10. Okay. It'll be fun to watch the young guys like Devin and Keldon and all those guys who played with DeJounte go up against him, even if Victor's not there. And I guess now hearing their record, it gives me a little bit more hope, but I'm still kind of have the same vibe that I have for every game at this point, until we play the Pistons or something who have a worse record than us.
Thank you, Pistons. You know what? Since just brought up the Pistons, just real quick, it's not going to happen, but I do like the whole Cade Cunningham to San Antonio rumors that keep popping up on my Twitter.
That would be nice. It's not very nice. Happen,
but yeah, it would be fantastic. It'd make my day.
For sure. Now, the other thing I was going to do, I was going to confirm your suspicion that Don Barlow is leading the G League in points.
Pretty sure.
I know he was earlier, but we shall see. I don't know if he's he may not be at 30 anymore because he's had a couple 20-point games. But he is still leading the G League in points per game at 28.
Let's go, baby. I knew it.
Shout out my boy Dom. He's got 7 points and about a block and a steal as well. Or 7 rebounds, excuse me.
I was about to say, what?
Not 7 points. Why did I say that? Sorry. let
Oh
me
my
get.
gosh. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Victor Wembanyama in the comments says he wants to play with Jaden Ivey, not Cade Cunningham. Wow. Victor, this is why you're the player and not the GM, my friend.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I to be honest with you, I haven't really dug into enough Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham tape to compare them. But what I would say is that Cade Cunningham is a number one overall pick. Um, and kind of the leader of the Pistons, it seems like, in the center of their rebuild. So I
Mhm.
think I would take Cade over Jaden Ivey as well. But Jaden Ivey is a good player for
He is.
sure. And he does bring and I think probably what Victor's getting at a little bit more there is just the defensive side of
I
things.
love that we're
Yeah,
calling
I
Victor.
know we got to. We got
It
to.
has
He's,
to be.
we're talking to him. This is actually him. No. But that's what we don't know. Imagine
Yeah, he's in the comments.
he's like, I want Jaden Ivey over Cade, and then we're disagreeing. No,
Like, no, you're
but
wrong, Victor.
but no, okay. In all seriousness, I think probably the reason that he's thinking that though has to
Defense.
yes, right, because when you look at the point guard position defensively, Jeremy's had some good starts to games, but still, him and Trey have just been caught under screens
Mhm.
repeatedly throughout the season, which has given star players and ball handlers specifically who already are probably good off the dribble shooters space in the mid range and from three whenever they get a screen. So I get why you're going for the defense there at point
Mhm.
guard because that's something that we need.
I was gonna say real quick, Jude. I know we're trying to wrap this thing up, but are you happy that the Spurs did not end up signing Austin Reeves to that big contract?
Yeah, that's pretty. It's interesting that we offered it. I don't know if you heard that, but we did end up offering it. But he didn't. I don't think it was the biggest offer. But yeah, I'm still. I mean, I'm. Yeah, I don't think that Austin Reeves, what he's doing right now. Shout out to him. I think he's leading the league in rebounds and assists off the bench.
Yeah,
Um, but I don't think he'd be doing that here.
something tells me he wouldn't. I think he's struggling to score a little bit,
Yeah,
but
he's. It's not the same. It's not the same as the playoffs. He's definitely taken a little bit of a
Mhm.
you know
But since they moved him to the
back to
bench,
earth.
you're right. He's played a lot better.
Yeah, and but notice the thing that I mentioned there were rebounds and assists, not
Mhm.
points.
Not
So
point, not points. True.
let's see what Nezzy has to say here. I was really surprised how good our transition offense last season was, despite our record. Not so much this year so far.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Victor says this is what he clarifies. He says technically I want Tyrese Halliburton. Who doesn't? But in all seriousness, I definitely take Alex Caruso over Jaden and Cade. So
Me too.
interesting there. I think right now as a franchise, I would. I mean, well, if I just got a free, if we're trading for Jaden and Cade, we're giving up way more than we are for Alex Caruso.
Yeah.
So that's why I would say that I would take Alex Caruso right now over both of those guys. I mean, I guess if I got an opportunity to get Cade Cunningham, I would want it. But I feel like the Spurs would probably have to give up like at least like Devin Vassell and probably like Sohan or Keldon. And I don't really want to. I know it may sound crazy to say right now that I don't want Devin Vassell for Cade Cunningham, but I'd just rather do what we're doing right now in our path and not we're
Yeah.
not gonna. The fact I'm even having this
Yeah.
conversation, we're not trading for Cade Cunningham, but Alex Caruso, I think would be a good fit would be a better fit for this Spurs team and their trajectory than those two. That was the point I was trying to get to.
Very well said, Jude. Hey, we might get another number one pick before long anyway. So
Hey, I don't. I
knock
know I
on wood.
said I wasn't gonna look at the draft, man. I know I said I wasn't gonna do it, but I've been peeking a little bit. I've been peeking a little bit.
Pause.
Um. For real. But I don't know how much have you looked into it at all, Ethan? Do you have any draft knowledge?
The only thing I know is that if we get a high pick, Isaiah Collier is the general consensus.
Right. And that's very true. And he's a player who's rising up draft board. So it'll be interesting to see where we finish. Because there might be somebody that would take him above us if we get in like that 4 or 5 range. Because we'll see. There's a lot of college basketball left to play, but in some of the early like no ceilings draft stock stuff that they've done, they've had him kind of up there. And then the other thing that I want to talk about is the guys that these guys are talking about in the comments. So there, Nick says, "Do y'all hear about the 7-1 French guy?" There are two things. Okay, first of all, he's probably going to be the number one player. Are you getting these balloons right now?
Yes.
I don't know where that came from. If y'all got the balloons on the stream, I don't. Restream does that, dude. It's so weird. Like, I've been doing thumbs up and I've been getting that too. Anyways, I didn't get that right there, but usually a little icon shows up. This is getting away from the Alexandre Star talk, Ethan. That's what we're really talking about right now, okay? And he's from France. What are you laughing at?
The balloons.
Just how they came out of nowhere.
What the heck was that? Sorry, continue.
Everybody's. I guess it. Hey, Nezu says happy birthday. LOL. Shout out to Courtney. It's Courtney's birthday.
Yeah, maybe they just.
Maybe it's delayed.
Dude, what the heck? I'm like looking around now, like trying to figure out how that
Dude,
happened.
I've seen. There's been a thumbs up logo. I know you're not doing it. It's not showing up for us right now, of course. But it like, I've seen stuff like that happening lately in here. But shout out to Restream. Anyways, Alexandre Sarr, dude. So he's French. He's 7'1". He plays in the NBL. He's a part of their Next Stars program in Australia, and I think he plays for the Perth Wildcats. And there's a couple other dudes this year. There's a guy who I can't remember his name. I know Bobby Klintman is another one who's out there.
I like that name.
And then there is a point guard who I know is going to be. He could have gone to most Power Fives in college basketball. You know, like if you wanted to go to Kansas or UNC, all those powerhouses, he's playing in there. Point is that Next Stars program, and like we saw LaMelo Ball play there. I know what you're smiling about. You better not be smiling about a certain Australian in the league, okay? Because he wasn't a part of the NBL Next Stars program. He was just from there. All right.
I don't know who you're talking about. I might be.
I don't know who you're talking about. But Alexandre Star, okay, or Sarr, number one player in as of right now, you know, in that range. All right, from France, right? You got the roots, but here's the most important thing, Ethan. And I'm so mad that it's taken me so long to get to this. Do you know where he played before he played in the NBL?
Texas State?
No. That's a good guess. Because that would be something we'd be excited about.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's another league.
The Globetrotters. I don't know.
Come on. You know.
Do I?
You do. You know. Oh, you know.
G League? I don't know. What?
Overtime Elite.
Oh. It's like
was I crazy?
I thought it was gonna be something weird. Like I thought it was gonna be like funny. So I was like, I don't know.
Well, that's what I thought. You know, because we've had so much fun with
Barlow.
Talking about Barlow and the Thompson twins. Okay, but in all seriousness, he played with and against the Thompson twins in both of those years. And it was basically just his alternative of, I think he graduated high school early or was homeschooled, but he, you know, had a lot of potential in France. They wanted him to come, you know, to the US to kind of stop. They wanted him to come to the US, okay, because they wanted him to learn American basketball. I mean, think about Victor, right? And what we've seen this year. And then now he's playing, you know, in Australia, and we've seen other guys, you know, turn into all-star level players coming from that program. So he's somebody that I'm really intrigued with, and there's been a lot of talk from Spurs fans around him as well, and he would kind of be like a Twin Towers next to Wembanyama. But he's also a guy, Ethan, really, that could play like the three. Like if you go watch him, yeah. He's very, you know, he's only like even though he's 7'1", he's only like 205, you know, can shoot, you know, kind of similar to Wemby, kind of in their kind of their style of play. You know, obviously they're different. They're very different. Like I wouldn't say that his potential is, you know, near Victor's. But he kind of has, you know, kind of that new age, you know, kind of like, I would say he's like it's tough to say. I don't know. It's hard to describe him. We'll have to see. Maybe I'll let his season play out since it's still November. And we can have a better maybe comparison there at the end of the year after I really dive deep on his tape. But But otherwise, the point is lots of potential there and seems like your prototypical new player in the modern NBA, somebody who's very switchable, very versatile, and has height, but also, can kind of like we're seeing with Chet and some of these other dudes, move around the floor.
Perhaps a Santi Aldama comp?
Oh my goodness. He's more mobile than Santi.
Really? That's hard.
Yeah.
It's tough to be more mobile than Santi.
No, he's going to be in the conversation though for like a top 3 pick. So I'm talking about him. That would be like, like really good scenario for the Spurs there. If they took him, but I don't know. We'll see. But I feel like as of right now, Isaiah Collier is actually probably not just this consensus in Spurs land, but I'll give them some credit here. It's also probably the most realistic as of right now. I know our record's really bad, but as you kind of mentioned, we'll probably win some more games at the end of the year when teams start resting guys, et cetera, like we saw last season. And I think as much as we've been wrong about a lot of stuff, I think at that point of the season with Victor, that will help us. Like that will help us get more W's than we did last season. So I think we'll be a little bit more in kind of that 3 to, I mean, you never know with the lottery, but I think we'll be more in that like 3 to 5 range than going for number 1. And it's hard to do that 2 years in a row too, just with the lottery. I'm not going to bet on that. So
unless you're the Cavs.
Unless you're the Cavs, that's for sure.
You know who I want in the second round though, Jude?
Who?
Give me Caden Gums.
See, but he's not draft eligible yet.
Is he not?
No, he's a freshman.
Oh, some freshmen come out, right? Not a Texas State?
For yeah, exactly. Not a Texas.
What about old boy at
Malik Presley?
Yeah. Malik Presley, second round.
These are years. Look, in like 2024, 2025, the Spurs will pick both of them up, and then we'll have them on, and that'll be great. Excellent. For those of you guys who don't know who we're talking about, I covered some D1 players that I have pretty good relationships with. I say I covered them, but I like to think that we're friends as well. And one plays at Texas State and one plays at Vanderbilt. And my dream is that one day they become San Antonio Spurs and make it to the league. So shout out to Malik, learning from Jerry Stackhouse, and shout out to Caden, starting as a true freshman, leading the team in points.
Maybe we can get a 2-on-2 game. What we each get one of them.
No. Okay. Yeah. That would work.
I'm smaller, so I'll take Malik.
I'm 1-0 against D1 football players, though. Actually, me and a friend of mine are 1-0 in 2-on-2 against 2 former collegiate football players. Yes.
You and who I think it is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Can we not say his name? We always say
no, we can say, my friend Deshaun.
Yeah,
shout out to him.
We always do that. We always dance around who he is.
You never know who wants, their name out and stuff like that. Yeah. But
I was going to say who wants to smoke. I was like, they're going to look up Deshaun. Like, 1-on-1.
Okay, this is another thing, actually, that I think this is a good comment here from Victor. And I think this is something to watch. Like, I talked about potentially, down the line, us losing some guys, having to make some moves. And like you said, when the franchise player walks in the door, everything is back on the table. And he says, what about trading for Bilal, as in Bilal Coulibaly, Victor Wembanyama's teammate, who's been doing pretty well for the Washington Wizards over there. And it just seems like he just oozes potential. And on top of that, he was 18 in the draft last year. I think he still is 18. And if he's not, he, has just turned 19. So one of the younger players in the draft too. He says, what about trading for Bilal and experimenting him at point guard? If the Spurs want a bigger point guard, I already love his defense and playmaking.
Yeah.
I don't know if we necessarily need to play him at point guard. And I feel like that this potentially happening would be something far down the line, because I'm sure the Wizards love his potential right now. And when you think about where the Wizards are at, they kind of got to hold on to all the talent they can, especially somebody who's 18. Mm-hmm. And I know I know Kuzma's been having a good season, but I'm sure you guys have all seen all the Jordan Poole stuff. And I don't know their record off the top of my head, but I don't think
2-14.
I didn't think it was at the top of the Eastern Conference. So I don't think that trade will be happening anytime soon. But I really do think there's a chance that they could reunite down the line. because
in
and
Washington. I'm just
I
kidding.
have yeah.
I'm
And
just joking.
I have nothing, I obviously have nothing to tell me that. That's just going off the fact of, how Victor talked about him
Mhm.
prior, and also the fact that he also played for Metropolitans 92 and our boy Boris Diaw.
Mm.
And just growing up in France as well. If Victor had that, affinity for the Spurs, I'm sure he does too. Now, it seems like he's a pretty stand-up kid, so he may be, someone he might be Bradley Beal 2.0, Ethan. But I really think that he is a name to watch. Like, obviously we're talking like years in advance. But I think that could be somebody that maybe if he turns out to be, an all-star level player, maybe that's somebody that we could lure to San Antonio down the line.
Right now, he's the second best perimeter defender coming out of the draft, I would say.
Yeah.
Second only to Asar Thompson, who's just crazy right now.
For real. For real. What's up?
Dude, do you give me permission to quickly, kindly, politely flex?
Yes, of
Not
course.
physically flex, but I'm going to put up a comment here.
Go
Flex
ahead.
my basketball knowledge.
Okay.
You're correct. They did get back-to-back number one picks. However, the number one pick was technically Chris Webber, whose draft rights were traded for Penny Hardaway, who I believe was the second pick. So, sorry, that was just me.
No. There you go.
Had to be said.
Nick Matson says, if we tried to upgrade the center position, who would y'all trade Collins for?
I don't know. I don't know if anyone's available necessarily that we could just trade like one for one. Zach.
Charles Bassey.
Ooh.
No.
You know who might be available that I would actually like? Jude, but he's not going to come here because we're
Go
not a
ahead.
contender.
Just for the sake of Nick's question. Right.
Andre Drummond might be available from Chicago, and I would like him on the Spurs.
I would like that too. I know that's not anything crazy, but I think that's like the type of guy next to Victor. And also even just off the bench that would help us a lot.
Mm-hmm.
We need a big body. I know we got Keldon, but he's a big body at the 2 and the 3. We need a big body 5.
Yes.
Chuck Bass is, he's there, but we're talking about a starter.
Yeah. Agreed.
Shout out Chuck Bass. Donovan Clingan. So I think this is another draft name. I do not know where he goes. Let me look this up. But it seems like he is a center that people would be very happy with. And he is 7'2". He plays for UConn, which means he's a defending national champion. And he's 280 as well. He says he's like Jakob on steroids. Anybody from UConn that's starting and that draft people are like you're a first rounder, I would not be opposed to. Now, granted, and the other key thing here too, Ethan, this could be maybe somebody we use with that other pick that we're probably going to get for the Raptors, because that's another thing that we talked about this in the last episode, but I forgot as we're doing this stream that's also a possibility, because I was about to say he might not be in the range, although to be honest, maybe he is. Like I said, I've looked into it a little bit, but it's mainly just been like the top 5 guys. But that could be somebody that we could also get later in the draft as well. And that's another thing. Here's kind of maybe the last thing that we can end on, Ethan, is we're almost at an hour here. Do you think that the Spurs, and this may be a stupid question, but do you think that in the draft this year, say things continue to go the way that they go, say we win like 25, 28 games, right?
Mm-hmm.
And kind of similar issues throughout the season. Do we fray from best player available? Like, obviously the Spurs are always going to say that they're taking the best player available. Even if we draft Isaiah Collier at 4 and this Clingan guy, and this is just for sake of conversation, maybe they won't be available in these ranges. But like I said, for right now here in November at 16, right, let's say, because those would fill some needs. You got your point guard and then you got a big body center. Like, will we emphasize that more this year? Like, will we emphasize player needs in the draft? Like I said, we're always going to say, oh, these were the 2 best guys we thought were available. But this season, after adding Victor, I feel like it could be more of a possibility. They're not going to be public about it, but what do you think? That's my opinion.
Man, I think it will be situational. It depends on who's available.
Where we're picking.
Like where we're picking. who's available at the time that we're picking and what position do they play. I think they might still operate at best player available, Jude, only because the only guy that's truly set is Victor Wembanyama. You can make an argument Devin Vassell also cornerstone at
Right.
that shooting guard position. Everywhere else, I think you got to go best player available.
For where you're at.
Mhm.
Yeah. And the other thing I'm thinking about while you're talking as well is we have so much cap.
Yeah, no cap.
And I know we got to save some for some of these guys, but I'm about to do something that's forbidden among most Spurs fans, Ethan. I'm going to give some credit to the Rockets
Because they went out and they spent some money.
and got some glue guys. And I know we beat them earlier in the year, and that doesn't change the fact that, you know,
They're the Rockets.
we're one of our. I mean, imagine being the Rockets. You're having a good year, and the Spurs, who are on a 12-game losing streak, still won. Man, like that would be so tough. I mean, they're fine.
Mm-hmm.
Bigger point here, other than that funny little note with them being one of our 3 wins. That's kind of the point I was trying to make. There is we still gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
The addition of Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks to their young core has helped a lot. I know we talk about Dylan Brooks a lot, etc., but both of those guys have playoff experience. And I believe, did the Grizzlies ever make the Western Conference Finals, or am I just crazy?
I don't think they ever did.
Yeah. Okay. Did they ever even get past the first round?
Yes, because they beat us.
Okay.
They upset us when we were the number 1 seed.
No, I'm talking about with Ja
Oh, with Ja.
and like Dylan Brooks.
No, I don't
How
think
far
so.
did they go in that run?
They
Is it
lost. I don't know. I don't think they ever did get past the first round, Jude. Nope, they might have gotten to the second round once.
I think they did. Yeah. I was just trying to make the point that, like, obviously Van Vliet has won a championship. So there you go there. But I was just trying to make the point that they have, significant playoff experience, as well. But you've seen the turnaround they've made with their young core. So, we could just go like best player available and then maybe try to get someone in the offseason. And I think it's also interesting, not to go all over the place here, but I think it's interesting with what you mentioned. If that ends up being true and we end up moving like Shetty, Doug, and Devontae, and like you said, well, who knows how true it'll be. But if we end up moving 2 or 3 of those guys or a couple of those guys, over time, I think also Doug's contract is just up after this season as well as Shetty's. That's going to open up some other spots for some vets to replace them.
Yes, most definitely. And I think some of our young guys may also become available sooner rather than later. Not this year, but just as we look at cap, like you were saying, and as we move forward into the next couple of years, the timetable shortens.
Yeah. It will be very interesting to see what happens with all of these guys moving forward. And it really, when you're mentioning that, Ethan, and I know like there could be some other moves that we make, but I think about our rookie class from last year in Jeremy, Malachi, and Blake. That just makes me wonder more about Blake, man. Like, not in the sense that we might move him, but just like what he does could have more of an impact. Like how he develops, I mean, could have more of an impact on some roster moves that we make than people are thinking about, I know that sounds crazy, but it's like if he's able to kind of harness, the potential that we saw in him, you know what I mean? At some point over the next 12 months, let's say, he could be in the rotation next year. I know I said I'm not confident in that earlier this season, but like I said, if that were to happen, but if it doesn't at all, and he's just kind of in the same spot that he was, it feels like for the past 2 years, is that somebody that we already think about moving, for a couple picks, even if they're just second rounders or something?
You never know.
Will be interesting times in Spurs land, Ethan. We appreciate you guys for hanging out with us today. I know there's some other comments down there, but we're going to wrap this one up because we're at about 1 hour and 5. This is one of the longest lives we've done in a while. We appreciate you guys being in here, all the comments, hanging out with us. It was good to get back to this. And don't forget to hit that like and that subscribe button below, even though they're not giving us icons or balloons when we do this. I don't.
I loved that. That's
That's
so
still
funny.
crazy. Like I didn't click anything. It just happened. But don't forget to hit that like and that subscribe button. And if you want to stay updated with everything, you can turn on the notification bell, go to our community tab on our channel for all the posts. And you can also stay updated on Twitter for all of our commentary, some quarter by quarter breakdowns, some games, and some other stuff that we like to do on there at SSPN on YT, at Jude McLaren, and at Ethan_Quintero. We appreciate you guys. We'll see y'all in the next one. Thanks for hanging out with us and hanging through this Spurs season. We'll be here tomorrow night, regardless of whether Wemby plays or not. Hopefully, we'll get to see Wemby versus DeJounte. We'll catch y'all.